Hey guys, tonight we're traveling back thousands of years to a land of shifting sand dunes, golden sunlight glinting off temple stone, and the soft, deliberate footsteps of a creature you might not expect to have such an important role in ancient civilization, the humble cat. You squint against the glare of the sun as you step off a creaking barge and into the busy port of ancient Memphis. The Nile hums beside you, lazy and wide, carrying cargo boats and tiny reed canoes. But your eyes are drawn to a figure winding through the feet of merchants, slipping silently between baskets of dried fish and bundles of papyrus. A cat, sleek, striped, and clearly in no rush. No one shoos it away. In fact, a merchant leans down to offer it a treat. You've just met one of Egypt's most beloved and influential coworkers. These cats don't clock in, but they're everywhere. In temples, homes, even government buildings. They walk with the poise of royalty and the entitlement of someone who knows you'll get up to give them your seat. And honestly, you probably would. But don't get too cozy. You're a time traveler in sandals that don't fit, in a culture that expects you to bow to cats. Literally. You probably won't survive this heat, let alone the social faux pas of disrespecting a sacred tabby. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop your location and what time you're listening. I love knowing where in the world you're drifting off. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You trudge slowly toward the temple quarter, your sandals kicking up lazy swirls of dust. The heat hangs around you like a thick curtain, but even here, among the weathered statues and long, echoing colonnades, cats reign supreme. A striped tom naps at the foot of a falcon-headed statue. A smaller gray one perches atop a sandstone column like it owns the place, which, to be fair, it kind of does. In ancient Egypt, cats weren't just pets, they were spiritual companions, pest control agents, and silent temple staffers. They weren't given little uniforms, missed opportunity, but they were shown reverence that bordered on divine. Imagine you're an early priest arriving at your temple post. You light incense, chant prayers, and leave out food. Not for your god, but for the temple cats. One cat wanders in mid-ritual, tail held high, and flops down in the middle of the floor. Do you move it? Of course not. You work around it respectfully while it bathes itself. This is normal. There's something amusing about this contrast. Elaborately carved stone, strict ceremonial procedures, and a fluffy calico rolling in the dirt where sacred oils are kept. But here in ancient Egypt, those contradictions make perfect sense. Mainstream historians agree that cats began their rise in Egyptian society around 1950 BCE, likely due to their unparalleled skill at keeping grain stores safe from rodents and snakes. But their climb wasn't just practical, it was also spiritual. You see, the Egyptian pantheon had a knack for adopting animals into divine roles. Crocodiles became Sobek, falcons became Horus, and eventually cats found their celestial patron in the form of Bastet. We'll get to her in the next section, but even before full deification, cats were admired. There's archaeological evidence, such as burials with cat figurines and murals showing cats reclining under chairs at banquets, that suggests people weren't just living with cats, they were actively honoring them. Now here's your quirky tidbit. There are records of Egyptian families shaving off their eyebrows when a cat died as a sign of mourning. Not a lock of hair, not a black armband. Eyebrows. Entirely gone. You walk around with a smooth forehead for weeks to say, yes, Mr. Whiskers meant that much to me. Historians still argue whether this was common practice or more symbolic in nature. Maybe not every household went eyebrowless, but enough did that ancient scribes thought to write it down. Imagine a whole town full of solemn, hairless brows silently paying homage to the family mouser. As you continue along the path between sandstone columns, a cat darts past, chasing something unseen. A beetle? A ghost? Hard to say. You pause, let it pass, then resume walking, carefully because you've already learned that stepping on a cat's tail here could be a legal nightmare. But more on that later. The sun lowers behind you, casting long shadows across the temple floor. One particularly plump ginger cat curls up beside a torch sconce and purrs like it owns the moon. It probably thinks it does. Somewhere nearby, a priest begins to hum a low chant. Incense coils into the air. You realize that these creatures, these lounging, licking, loafing animals, aren't side characters in this story, they're center stage. And you're just visiting. You follow the winding temple corridor where torchlight flickers against ancient wall carvings. And there she is, etched into stone with the delicate lines of reverence, Bastet. Half woman, half feline, she watches you with almond-shaped eyes, her serene smile suggesting she knows something you don't, and probably never will. Bastet, goddess of home, fertility, music, and protection, starts off in Egypt's early religious history as a fierce lioness. Yes, lioness. Back then, she was the daughter of Ra and a fiery protector, sometimes even confused with Sekhmet, another lioness deity who was famous for going on divine rampages. But as centuries passed and Egypt's social climate changed, Bastet softened, literally. Her image morphed into a domestic cat, a symbol of grace, calm, and gentle guardianship. You stand before her statue now, half expecting her to blink. The stone glimmers with offerings, woven lotus garlands, little bowls of milk, polished bronze mirrors. One might say she had the best work-life balance of all the gods, ferocious lineage, gentle modern persona, and a devoted fan base that never stopped bringing gifts. Modern scholars mostly agree Bastet's temple in Bubastis was one of the grandest in ancient Egypt. Located in the Nile Delta, it attracted thousands of pilgrims each year. It's said there were elaborate festivals held in her honor, music, feasting, and boat parades. Picture a divine Coachella, but with more eyeliner and fewer flower crowns. And the cats? Oh, they were everywhere. Not just hanging around for scraps either. Cats were bred and raised within temple grounds. Think of it as the earliest recorded cat cafe, minus the oat milk lattes. Here's a fringe fact that's still up for debate. Archaeologists have found cat cemeteries near Bubastis containing thousands, yes, thousands of feline mummies. Some were carefully wrapped and placed in decorated sarcophagi, others less so. Were they all beloved temple cats who died naturally? Or were some bred specifically for mummification and sale to visiting worshippers? Historians still argue whether this was sacred practice or early mass marketing. You brush past a sun-warmed pillar as you consider the logistics of it all. Imagine showing up at the temple, buying a mummified cat to offer Bastet, and returning home with your eyebrow hairs trembling in pre-grief preparation. Religion meets retail therapy. And just in case you think this was all symbolic, no. Cats had real power here. There are records that suggest harming a cat, even by accident, could carry serious consequences. One Greek historian, Diodorus Siculus, wrote about a Roman accidentally killing a cat and being mobbed by an angry crowd, despite officials begging them to spare him. Oops. Talk about stepping in it. You hear soft mewling in the distance. Probably a kitten learning the temple layout. More maze than map. A young priest kneels, gently scooping it up, whispering something you don't understand. His gestures say more than the words care, honor, respect. There's something almost subversive about it all. In a world of rigid hierarchies and towering gods, it's the cat, aloof, capricious, unimpressed, that ends up most adored. You imagine a scene from thousands of years ago. A high priest, robed in linen, bowing slightly as a cat pads past him. No words, just understanding. And don't forget, Egyptians didn't just venerate living cats. They immortalized them in art, statuary, and even personal names. Bastet isn't the only feline figure you'll see carved into tomb walls. Look closer and you'll spot domestic scenes, mothers holding children while cats play nearby, or banquet murals where a cat rests under the table like it's a guest in its own right. There's a theory among some historians that cats came to symbolize not only grace and independence, but also the ideal of ma'at, the concept of balance and order that underpinned all Egyptian society. After all, cats are natural enforcers of equilibrium. They stalk mice with methodical calm. They nap with architectural precision. They bring a sense of composed elegance to any room, especially one with sacred incense and complicated hieroglyphs. As the scent of lotus and resin thickens in the corridor, you start to feel a little drowsy yourself. A black and white cat winds between your legs and pauses just long enough to give you a look. You feel, not entirely rationally, that you've been judged and approved, for now. Outside the temple, the Nile breeze picks up. Somewhere far off, someone strikes a sistrum, a ceremonial rattle used in Bastet's worship. The sound is gentle, metallic, rhythmic, like the universe's version of a lullaby. Even the cats seem to slow. You're starting to understand now. In this world, cats weren't just part of the background. They were both symbols and participants in something far larger, an intricate dance of reverence, daily life, and cosmic order. So you move on, silently promising not to step on any tails and definitely not to touch your eyebrows if one looks at you funny. You walk deeper into the soft lit corridors of the temple complex, where the air feels heavier, thicker with incense, history, and the quiet dignity of domestic chaos. Today's assignment: shadow a temple cat keeper. You probably didn't expect ancient feline zookeeper to be on your travel itinerary, but here you are, already regretting your sandals. His name might be lost to time, but let's call him Nefer. He rises before dawn when the cats are already stretching in the warmth of the hearth. Dozens of them, tabbies, black short hairs, sandy-coated mousers, purring like a thundercloud. Nefer's job isn't just feeding them. He's a priest, a caretaker, a matchmaker of sacred lineage, and frankly, the only one who knows which cats can't stand each other. He starts with offerings: bowls of milk, ground fish, and sometimes even bits of goose or quail from the temple kitchens. Contrary to cartoon expectations, ancient Egyptians didn't feed cats just fish bones and leftovers. Food was part of the sacred duty. A well-fed cat was a content cat, and a content cat wouldn't swat at ceremonial dancers mid-prayer. That's the dream, anyway. As you follow Nefer through the stone corridors, you notice how deftly he moves around the cats, like someone living inside a purring puzzle. He talks to them too. Not baby talk, more like respectful negotiation. No, little Sekhmet, the offering tray is not for you. Heka, don't bite the incense carrier again. And somehow, they seem to listen. Scholars still debate whether temple cats were trained in any formal sense. Some argue they were semi-feral, merely tolerated due to their pest-controlling talents. Others believe these cats were selectively bred for gentler temperaments and even trained for ritual participation. Whatever the truth, you can't shake the feeling that you're being quietly observed by a particularly judgmental orange tabby. There's a side room, small and sun-drenched, where Nefer keeps his sick or elderly charges. He calls it the Golden Chamber, not because it's opulent, but because it's filled with warm morning light and the slow, glimmering pace of cats at rest. One limps over, purring so loud it echoes off the sandstone walls. You crouch and offer a tentative scratch behind the ears. You've been accepted, at least for now. In a dusty corner, you spot something peculiar: a stone basin carved with paw prints and strange symbols. This, Nefer tells you, is the washing basin for the holy paws. It's probably not entirely literal, but the idea that cats had their own purification rituals? Strangely believable. Back in the courtyard, young trainees gather, each cradling a kitten in a swaddle of linen. This is their first day of cat care instruction. There's a whole hierarchy here. Senior caretakers pass down tips on how to massage tiny shoulders, soothe startled mews, and interpret the ever-important tail flick. One wrong twitch, and you'll spend the afternoon trying to coax an offended tabby out of a ceremonial drum. Here's a detail you won't find in many textbooks. There are records, albeit fragmentary, that suggest high-ranking temple cats were given names, titles, even jewelry. A silver earring here, a tiny beaded collar there. Not for fashion, but for spiritual symbolism. A cat wearing a turquoise charm was thought to be blessed with protection by Hathor herself. You pause beside a sunbeam where a particularly well-fed cat sprawls like royalty. She yawns, revealing tiny, perfect fangs, then dozes off with zero concern for human dignity. You wonder if her lineage is older than half the noble families in Egypt. Probably. She certainly acts like it. Cats didn't only occupy temples, they lived in households, slept on pillows, even traveled with merchants. But here in the sanctuary of Bastet, they were elevated, cosmic little roommates with front row seats to divine rituals. They witnessed prayers, sacred dramas, even musical performances meant to honor the goddess herself. Can you imagine the meowing chorus when the harps start tuning? And yet, amid all this reverence, things weren't always perfect. Sorry. Some cats squabbled, some stole food. One memorable account from temple logs involves a cat knocking over a ceremonial oil lamp and causing a very smoky evening prayer. Nefer remembers that day with a grimace. Still, these creatures were seen as emissaries of harmony. Watching Nefer carry a sleeping kitten into the nursery chamber, you realize the Egyptians didn't worship chaos, they worshipped balance, and cats were walking contradictions. Fierce yet affectionate, aloof yet attentive, mysterious yet comfortingly ordinary. As evening falls, Nefer whistles softly, and the cats come trickling in out of nooks from rooftops behind statues. They return like shadows rejoining the dark. Each one seems to know their place, though a few still try to bluff their way into an extra helping of fish paste. Old habits. As the cats curl up in the straw-lined chambers and torchlight softens the room's edges, you feel the sacred hush settle in. It's not silence, there's always a bit of purring, a mewl here and there, but it's a shared exhale, an understanding that even in a world of gods, floods, pharaohs, and war, sometimes what you really need is a room full of napping cats. You give Nefer a nod. He returns it, eyes twinkling beneath his linen head wrap, and closes the chamber door with a whisper-soft creak. The cats sleep. The temple breathes, and you tiptoe away, a little furrier, a little calmer than you were an hour ago. Morning again, and your duties have shifted. Today, you've been assigned to the scribal chamber, because yes, in ancient Egypt, even the cats had paperwork. You shuffle along the cool limestone floor, half listening to the low murmur of prayers in the distance. The scribe's chamber smells like ink, papyrus, and the faintest whiff of cat musk. Somehow the combination is oddly comforting. Think library cat meets state bureaucracy. Your guide this morning is a meticulous man named Jedet, who insists on showing you his reed pens before saying hello. Very fine nib, he mutters proudly, dipping one into a pot of soot ink. He's working on a scroll labeled with delicate hieroglyphs that loosely translate to lineage and incarnations of Bastet's companion's 14th regnal year. Yes, it's a cat registry. According to temple tradition, the most revered cats were believed to carry fragments of Bastet's divine essence. Some were seen as minor incarnations of the goddess herself. And like all VIPs of the divine variety, they had to be recorded, tracked, and remembered. You're handed a scroll to hold, carefully, mind you, and your fingers trace the pictographs, paw prints, fish offerings, names like Mehenut and Sefek Bast. One entry is marked with a gold border, denoting a particularly auspicious litter born during a lunar eclipse. Jadet whispers, historians still argue whether that litter was truly prophetic or just famously well-behaved. There's also a curious category of reports labeled incidents. These range from minor altercation with poultry to defiled sacred incense bowl, possibly during full moon. Some even include tiny illustrations. One in particular shows a smug cat perched atop a half-toppled statue of Thoth. Mischief? Miracle? The scribes left it deliberately vague. You try not to laugh as Jadet sternly explains the significance of each entry. Even divine beings, he says, must be monitored. You nod solemnly while a nearby tabby bats a feather quill off the desk with great ceremony. The scribes didn't just keep behavioral records, they also chronicled dreams involving cats. Dreams were sacred after all, potential omens, messages, or divine instructions. One faded scroll tells of a priest who dreamed a striped kitten led him to a buried statuette of Bastet beneath the temple floor. The next day, he dug in that very spot and found exactly that. Coincidence? A plant? Or genuine divine cat GPS? Skeptics might scoff, but you're starting to believe, especially when a ginger tom hops onto your lap, curls up like a scroll in his own right, and starts purring like a ritual drumbeat. Beyond the scrolls, Jedit also keeps clay tags, small, rounded tablets that act like ID badges. Some have little holes drilled through the top, suggesting they may have been worn around a cat's neck or attached to ceremonial collars. They're inscribed with phrases like, beloved of the moon, mouse slayer, and your favorite, sleeps through storms. Not every cat received a title, Jedit explains, only those who prove themselves. You imagine an ancient trial, 3 days of pest control, dignified behavior, and dignified naps. Kind of like your last job interview. And then there's the temple mural. Jadet ushers you into a side chamber where low torchlight reveals a faded but still striking wall painting. Dozens of cats, each painted in profile, stalk across a lush imagined garden. Some are hunting snakes, others are curled in the laps of musicians. A few are even sailing miniature boats, a scene that scholars still puzzle over. Symbolic of the soul's journey? Or maybe just an artistic interpretation of cats will sit in literally anything. There's a calm, unhurried pace to this part of temple life. No incense smoke here, no sacred chants, just the scratch of reed pen on papyrus, the rustle of feline fur across baskets, and the occasional yowl of a cat who's decided your sandals are her new bed. One papyrus you help roll up contains a kind of prayer, not to the gods, but to a specific temple cat named Nebbit. It thanks her for 20 seasons of loyal companionship and gentle vigilance in the rafters. You picture her poised above the temple court, watching silently like a whiskered guardian. Then it hits you. Some of these cats outlived several priests. They were the quiet continuity behind the daily swirl of divine ritual and human ambition. Jeddah gently places the scroll in a cedar chest and closes the lid with reverence. History, he says, is not just kings and wars. Sometimes it is the things that sleep at our feet. Outside the chamber, the sun is high, and the cats are sprawling in the shade like spilled honey. You spot two kittens wrestling near a half-open scroll and realize this place, for all its formality, is alive. Purring, scratching, shedding history, one soft footstep at a time. It's midday now, and the scent of lentil stew drifts through the halls of the temple. You follow your nose past rows of columns to a shaded courtyard where the temple cats take their lunch as seriously as the priests take their prayers. The feline dining area is surprisingly organized. Stone bowls line the edges of the courtyard, each carved with names or tiny pictographs. One has a lotus for a cat named Session. Another shows two crossed fish bones, possibly the signature dish for a particularly enthusiastic eater. Nearby, a priest is portioning out fish bits with the kind of devotion normally reserved for sacred rites. And really, in this temple, it's hard to tell the difference. You crouch beside a sleepy marmalade cat as she licks delicately at a dish of mashed chickpeas. Turns out temple cats weren't just carnivores. Their diet was varied, fish, of course, but also pulses, bread soaked in milk, even figs. Balanced offerings, your guide murmurs, must keep the divine vessels healthy. You blink. Divine vessels? Yes. The priests genuinely saw these cats as physical homes for fragments of divinity, so it makes sense they'd pay close attention to what went in those vessels. Nutrition was important. Clean water, too, drawn from special wells and poured into polished alabaster dishes. You try to drink from your hand and nearly choke. The cat beside you gives you a withering look. There's even a feeding schedule. Several, actually. Different cats have different needs, and some fast during certain temple rituals. Others are given rich meals to coincide with festivals, especially the Feast of Bastet, when legends say fish practically rained from the sky. Historians still argue whether the fish rain was metaphorical or perhaps inspired by an actual Nile overflow that swept the market stalls. You watch as a fluffy gray tom receives a delicately plated meal from a junior priest. The priest bows slightly before placing the dish, murmurs a blessing, and steps away. The cat ignores it for a moment, then knocks the bowl over. Another priest rushes in with a cloth. No one seems upset. Each one, your guide explains, is a sovereign being. You start to see it. These cats have routines, preferences, moods. Some eat alone, others in pairs, and a ginger and white duo seems to insist on eating from the same bowl, despite there being two identical ones nearby. You watch them squabble gently, tails flicking, then settle into simultaneous crunching. Nearby, a chalkboard-like tablet tracks dietary notes. Someone's drawn a crude cat face next to the entry, refused lentils again. Another line reads, new mix equals success with an enthusiastic fish doodle. It's like a divine cafeteria suggestion box, but for cats. Then there's the dining matriarch, an elderly calico who oversees the meals with such gravity, you half expect her to pull out a checklist. She watches the proceedings from atop a stone bench, occasionally meowing with what seems like judgmental approval. A priest refers to her as Mother Nebbet, and you realize it's the same name from the scroll earlier. She's retired from temple duties now, but still respected. Fed first. Tucked into her blanket like a small, furry pharaoh. Feeding time winds down. Cats stretch, wash their faces, and wander off in that aimless yet intentional way cats have perfected over thousands of years. One climbs into a sunbeam and immediately falls asleep. Another pounces on a beetle with the focus of a lion hunting gazelle. A third tries to sit inside a clay pot, clearly too small for any mammal with bones. You linger, noticing how quiet it becomes once the crunching stops. The courtyard is filled with soft feline breaths, the occasional thump of a tail, and the faint rustle of papyrus leaves in the breeze. It's not just lunchtime. It's an entire social ritual. Your guide tells you that food offerings are also made on behalf of departed temple cats. During certain moon phases, priests place fish and milk at small shrines decorated with painted cat faces and garlands of dried flowers. These aren't just tributes, they're tokens of continuity. Proof that even in death, a temple cat's presence is honored. One wall bears faint etchings from years past, marks left by cats as they brushed against the soft stone. No one scrubs them away. They're treated like ancestral fingerprints, preserved like relics. You ask about the origin of all this reverence. Your guide points to a now crumbled relief carving showing Bastet with a kitten curled in her lap. Legend says she birthed the first sacred litter beneath a fig tree after defeating a snake demon. Whether that's myth or metaphor, no one's quite sure. But the fig tree still stands in the garden, and cats still nap beneath it. Back in the courtyard, one final bowl is placed for a slender black cat who refuses to eat unless the priest sings. And so the young man hums a gentle tune while spooning out a mixture of fish and barley. The cat purrs, swishes her tail, and finally condescends to eat. You lean against a column and smile. In this temple, hierarchy may begin with gods and kings, but it most certainly ends with cats. Now that the cats have eaten and the sun has begun to lean westward, it's time for one of the temple's more curious rituals: cat grooming. Yes, in ancient Egypt, divine hygiene was no joke. You trail behind a young priest carrying a basket of neatly folded linens and small wooden combs. He hums a tune as he walks, stopping occasionally to let a sleepy cat jump up into his arms. The cats seem to know what's coming. Most go willingly, like miniature royalty arriving at a spa appointment. A few dart into shadowy alcoves only to be coaxed out with bribes of dried sardine. You arrive at a chamber with latticed windows, dappled sunlight, and soft reed mats arranged in little nests. This is the grooming room, where temple cats are brushed, bathed, yes, bathed, and sometimes even perfumed. You can't help but raise an eyebrow. Bathed? Willingly? Well, not always. A pair of priests demonstrates the technique. One gently holds a tabby under its front legs, allowing the other to dab a damp cloth across its back. No dunking, no splashing, just warm water and patience. Occasionally, a squawk of protest echoes down the hall, followed by a priest whispering apologies in Old Egyptian. You crouch beside an elderly priest as he combs the long fur of a white cat with amber eyes. This one, he says softly, likes rosewater. He dips his fingers in a tiny bowl and lets her sniff. The cat nods, or seems to. She stretches luxuriously as he works, and you catch a whiff of the floral scent, faint, not overwhelming. Historians still debate whether perfuming temple cats was widespread or limited to elite temples like this one. The evidence is fragmentary: traces of oils found in cat tombs, ambiguous wall paintings showing priests holding both cats and fragrance bottles. But here, at least, it seems to be tradition. There's even a record of special grooming tools: ivory combs, soft bristle brushes, and linen towels embroidered with feline motifs. One towel shows a cat licking its paw, tongue extended in perfect pink detail. Another shows two cats grooming each other, tails intertwined. You imagine a craftsman somewhere laughing softly as he stitched it. The grooming routine isn't just about cleanliness, it's spiritual maintenance. A clean vessel is a blessed vessel, the priest explains. Fur matted with dust? Bad omen. Scratched nose? Unbalanced energy. One priest spends his afternoon examining tiny claws with the precision of a jeweler. Any cracked or overgrown ones are gently filed with the bit of pumice. You imagine him moonlighting as a cat manicurist. Not all cats appreciate the attention. One gray tom climbs the priest's back like a mountain goat and perches on his shoulder, glaring at the comb. The priest sighs. Every day, this one. You laugh, earning a startled meow from the cat, who narrows his eyes and leaps onto a windowsill. Still, most submit to the ritual. There's something meditative about it all. The brushing, the soft chatter, the flick of tails. You start to relax just watching. It's like witnessing a sacred version of a cat cafe, where every motion has purpose and every purr is a kind of hymn. The room even has its own shrine, a small alcove with a carved image of Bastet, flanked by two real cats, who seem to have appointed themselves guardians. They lounge there, blinking solemnly at anyone who enters. One has a paw draped over the other, and they both seem to approve of the grooming efforts. Or perhaps they're just waiting for snacks. You're offered a comb and gesture hesitantly to a striped kitten who approaches with a tilted head. As you run the comb down her back, she leans into your hand, purring with surprising intensity. Her fur is warm from the sun, and she smells faintly of crushed herbs. A priest chuckles. You've been chosen. There's a communal element, too. Cats groom each other between human sessions, licking ears, nibbling stray hairs. Some even groom their favorite priests. One particularly smitten feline keeps licking a young man's bald head. He doesn't stop her. This bond, the mutual grooming, the shared rituals, cements the cat's place in temple life. They aren't just mascots or symbols. They're colleagues, fellow worshippers. One priest refers to his assigned cat as Brother Whisker. You assume he's joking until he bows and says a prayer in unison with the animal. By now, several cats have settled into grooming-induced naps. The air hums with 100 soft breaths, the faint rhythm of comb through fur, and the rustle of linen. It's a symphony of serenity. Then there's the grooming ledger. Yes, that's a thing. A scroll lists the cats who've been groomed, noting their favorite oils, any skin issues, or behavioral quirks. One entry reads, refused lotus oil, swatted priest, requested privacy. Another simply says, purring unusually, investigate moon cycle. You ask if anyone ever groomed Bastet statues. Your guide nods. Regularly. Even the stone needs renewal. Some statues are washed, rubbed with oils, and wrapped in clean linen before feast days. The same rhythms of care mirrored in divine and feline forms. There's something deeply touching about it all. These rituals, these gentle routines, they're not about vanity. They're about reverence, a respect for life, for touch, for the small daily acts that bind community together. In the grooming room, hierarchy dissolves. Everyone, priest and cat alike, becomes part of something soft and sacred. You linger until sunset's light spills golden across the reed mats. The temple bells ring out in the distance, and the cats stir. Another day's work nearly done. But for now, just one more brushstroke down a silky back. Just one more purr echoing through ancient stone. By the time the sun finally dips below the horizon, the cats have retreated to their favorite nooks, some curling into terracotta bowls, others sprawling across sun-warmed flagstones like spilled ink. But while they rest, the temple itself begins to stir into a different kind of life. Night worship. You wander down a corridor lined with flickering oil lamps. The air smells of frankincense and old stone. Somewhere nearby, a low chant begins, soft and rhythmic, like a heartbeat slowed by twilight. The temple's inner sanctum prepares to welcome the moon, and with it, Bastet's more mysterious side. Protector, warrior, night wanderer. Though you're still not quite used to the idea, tonight you have a role. You've been invited to join the night attendants, a small group of priests and caretakers whose job it is to monitor the temple cats after dark. Yes, even when the city sleeps, the cats keep watch, and someone has to keep watch over them. You're handed a woven sash and a small bell. The bell, they explain with a wink, is not for calling others. It's for warning cats that you're coming, in case they don't want to be stepped on. They let you walk the halls, the lead attendant says, but they don't always make room. Your first stop is the feeding alcove, where nighttime offerings are laid out. Unlike the more lavish morning meals, this is a simpler affair. Leftover fish, cool porridge, a few honey-dipped dates for the particularly spoiled. Some cats arrive silently, eyes glowing like twin moons in the dim light. Others meow with gusto, announcing their hunger to the stars. While the cats eat, the attendants whisper prayers, gentle blessings for safety, guidance, and peaceful dreams. One priest crouches beside a black kitten and recites a line from an old hymn. May your paws tread gently through the darkness, and may the stars greet you like kin. The kitten sneezes and immediately knocks over his bowl. Divine dignity has its limits. Historians still argue whether this sort of organized nighttime ritual existed across most temples, or if it was specific to Bastet's domains. Some believe these practices reflect a deeper belief in cats as liminal creatures, beings who moved effortlessly between day and night, seen and unseen, sacred and mundane. Cats weren't just companions, they were metaphysical bridges. You're led to the roof for a moment of stillness. The sky is painted in deep blues and silver streaks. Below, the city flickers with torchlight and echoing drum beats. But here, in the elevated hush of the temple's upper levels, it feels like another world entirely. A cat wends between your ankles and disappears into the dark. Another settles beside you, tail twitching lazily. Some of them hunt, your guide murmurs. Some just think. You glance down at the cat by your side. He stares out over the city, whiskers bristling in the wind, and you can't help but wonder, what's he thinking about? Inside, the scribes light their lamps and begin their night duties. Among them is a curious task, updating the dream scroll. Each night, attendants record their dreams, believing that Bastet sometimes speaks through sleep. The entries range from profound to peculiar. One scroll reads, Bastet appeared with 3 heads and asked for more sardines. Another simply says, dreamt of being a cat. Again. Cats are believed to walk the boundary of dreams, guiding or guarding the dreaming mind. In fact, in some healing temples, a cat was placed beside the bed of the ill or sleepless, a kind of living dream catcher. If the cat stayed through the night, it was seen as a good omen. Back on patrol, you help with the quietest task of all, checking the nesting chambers. These are cozy corners lined with palm fiber bedding where cats can sleep undisturbed. You peek into one and find a cluster of kittens nursing under their mother's watchful gaze. The priest beside you leaves a single white feather at the door, a symbolic offering for Bastet, and maybe, just maybe, a toy for the kittens. You tiptoe away, careful not to wake them, though one opens a sleepy eye and gives a half-hearted stretch. It's hard not to melt. In one of the more shadowed hallways, a tabby appears to lead you somewhere. You follow, curiosity piqued. She leads you to a narrow door you hadn't noticed before. Your guide smiles. That's her room, he says reverently. Inside is a small private shrine, said to be dedicated only to Bastet herself. No priests, no rituals, no scrolls, just a statue lit by a single flickering lamp, and, of course, a small stone bowl where someone has lovingly placed a sprig of mint and a feather. The tabby hops up and curls around the statue's base. She doesn't purr. She simply watches you. In this stillness, with the scent of incense lingering and the world hushed by moonlight, it's easy to feel the weight of centuries. You kneel, not sure why, and whisper a thank you. The cat blinks, slowly. Approval, perhaps. The night continues. You return to the main hall, where the final checklists are being marked, the lanterns trimmed, the temple gently folded into silence. Cats settle like stones across the floor, guarding the sacred space with curled tails and twitching ears. You're handed a small cup of warm barley milk, an unofficial tradition, the attendant jokes. It's surprisingly pleasant, faintly sweet. You sip and sit, back resting against a column, watching as one last priest quietly moves from cat to cat, offering a wordless blessing. Somewhere in the rafters, a kitten squeaks. Another meow answers from across the hall. The sounds fade. The lamps flicker, and finally the temple sleeps. You awaken to soft footfalls and the rustle of linen. Dawn is a pale blur on the horizon, not quite committed to being morning yet. The temple remains hushed, but the air carries a different energy, anticipation. As you stretch your limbs and brush stray straw from your tunic, a familiar paw taps your ankle. It's the tabby from last night's shrine visit, tail raised like a tiny scepter. She meows once imperiously, then trots toward the open courtyard. You follow without thinking. Outside, the world is bathed in a golden hush. Palm fronds glisten with dew, and the Nile hums in the distance. The temple cats are already in motion. Some are sunbathing, soaking up the warmth like furry solar panels. Others are stalking invisible prey, dried leaves, slow-moving beetles, or nothing at all. There's one lounging upside down in a basket, belly exposed like a challenge to decency. But this morning, you're here to assist the scribe priests. Your task? To document the temple cats, not just their behaviors, but their moods, their mischiefs, even their chosen napping spots. This, they explain, is part of a long-standing tradition. The scrolls of companionship. Historians still debate whether these scrolls were strictly religious or just early forms of sentimental cat journaling. Some argue they served as metaphors for moral instruction. Others believe they were just a way for bored priests to gossip through metaphor. The gray one with the torn ear shuns all company but the girl with the jasmine braid. You're handed a stylus and a scrap of fresh papyrus. You crouch near the colonnade and begin to observe. A striped tom leaps into a niche carved with hieroglyphs, only to yowl in indignation when he realizes it's already occupied. A dignified older cat perches on a pedestal beside a statue of Bastet, mimicking her pose so perfectly you suspect he's done this before. You write, Temple cat, orange striped, prefers elevated solitude, possibly a demigod. An attendant peers over your shoulder and nods in approval. Next, you assist with what may be the temple's most surprisingly formal duty: cat naming ceremonies. Yes, names. Though many cats remain anonymous, certain standout personalities are given ceremonial titles. These are usually bestowed based on behavior, appearance, or occasionally divine suggestion via dream. Today, a small white kitten with a single black spot on her nose is up for consideration. She has a tendency to follow the kitchen workers, meowing pitifully until someone drops a scrap of bread. Suggestions are offered: shadow nibbler, daughter of crumbs, she who complains at dawn. Eventually, the high priest settles on Mahuti, which translates roughly to whisper in the wheat. It's elegant, poetic, and entirely ironic, given the kitten's vocal nature. Still, she seems pleased, immediately flopping over and purring like a contented rattle. You jot it down in the scribe's ledger and add your own note: likely to overthrow temple leadership by sheer cuteness. And that's when your day takes a scholarly turn. One of the elder priests beckons you into the temple's record room, a chamber thick with dust, scrolls, and sleeping cats who have clearly claimed the shelves as personal property. You're tasked with helping to inventory some of the older cat-related documents. One scroll catches your eye. It's brittle, its edges nibbled, possibly by cats, possibly not, and covered in drawings, rough sketches of feline figures with annotations. You decipher a few. 8 offering bread, reprimanded by novice. Sat on scroll mid-ceremony, crowd laughed. Refused to move from lap during fire drill. It's like reading ancient social media. Another text lists a schedule of temple duties, and right between polish brass basin and trim incense wicks is ensure no cat has fallen into well again. The word again is underlined. Quirky as they are, these scrolls reveal something important. The temple cats weren't just tolerated, they were integrated, chronicled, mythologized. They were part of the temple's rhythm. Some scholars suggest that the temple cat system also had a political function. By treating cats as divine co-workers, the temple reinforced its closeness to the gods, and perhaps more practically, kept the rodent population down with an army of adorable enforcers. Still, debates linger. Did the reverence for cats originate purely from utility, or did something deeper stir in the Egyptian psyche, a recognition of the feline as a symbol of independence, mystery, and grace? Historians continue to swat at the question like so many unanswered scrolls, their conclusions forever just out of reach. As you emerge from the archive room, blinking in the new sunlight, a long-legged Tom circles your feet and looks up expectantly. You crouch, offer your palm, and he bumps it with his forehead, a quiet blessing. Later, you take part in a training session for young novices. The lesson? How to respectfully handle a sacred cat who is sitting exactly where you need to be. The technique involves gentle gestures, low soothing tones, and, in extreme cases, the offering of a soft cloth to lure the cat elsewhere. The lead instructor's advice: never try to move a sleeping cat with your foot. That's how we lost the third matriarch's good sandals. Evening draws near again. The cats grow lazier, stretching like little gods on vacation. You find yourself wondering how many generations of humans have quietly adored these creatures, noting their quirks, honoring their moods, and writing them into the margins of daily life. You make one final journal entry before dusk falls. Temple cat sat on my lap during prayers, felt like a benediction. And maybe it was. The sun sets like it's exhaling. The temple walls glow faintly amber, the sky streaked with soft lavender clouds, and the scent of warmed sandstone mingles with cooling herbs from the apothecary chamber. You're walking slowly now, your sandals making that faint swishing sound against the floor, just loud enough to let any lounging cat know you're coming. You're headed for the kitchen complex tonight. Yes, the sacred duties of cat companionship extend even into the realm of food preparation. Here, you'll discover just how seriously the ancient Egyptians took the relationship between cats and cuisine. As you enter, the air changes. It's dense with aromas: fresh flatbread, honey, leeks, lentils simmering over a clay hearth, and of course, that particular musty, meaty smell that only comes from keeping food in giant ceramic jars, sealed with reed stoppers and wishful thinking. Cats are everywhere. One is perched directly atop a sack of barley, eyes half closed, tail twitching as though dreaming of grain-fed mice. Another balances on the edge of a table, staring down a bowl of dried fish with the intensity of a tiny, hungry oracle. A third has somehow gotten inside a cooking pot, empty, thankfully, and refuses to leave. Your guide is a middle-aged cook named Senef, who explains that cats aren't just tolerated here, they're part of the kitchen's daily rhythm. You learn to chop with one eye on the onions, he says, and one eye on the tail near the fire. Senef gestures toward a cat lounging on the spice shelf. That one's called Pepper, mostly because she knocked over every single jar once and now everything tastes vaguely of cumin. And this is where the human-cat bond deepens, not just in the temples or ceremonies, but in these quiet, domestic exchanges, stealing bits of dried meat, weaving between legs, curling up in flour sacks. Historians still argue whether cats were deliberately fed in temple kitchens or simply helped themselves. Some evidence suggests bowls were placed out for them intentionally, a sort of early food station. Others think the cats earned their scraps through rodent control, a purr for pay arrangement. As you observe, you notice a ritual emerging. Before the final meal is prepared, a small offering is placed on a low stone slab, some fish scraps, a pinch of fat, a few beans. This isn't meant for the gods exactly, it's for the cats. A tradition passed down without much explanation. Senef shrugs. They help keep the mice out of the granaries. We give thanks. A striped kitten appears from behind a woven basket and begins meowing furiously. Senef sighs, retrieves a bit of dried liver, and offers it solemnly. The kitten snatches it and vanishes. There's even a mural on the kitchen wall, worn from time and steam. It depicts a feast, people reclining on cushions, servants pouring wine, and in the corner, a large tabby cat stealing a fish off a golden platter. The artist even painted a small oops expression on the servant's face. Scholars now think this might have been both comedic and instructive, a warning against leaving food unattended, cleverly disguised as art. As you assist with the evening prep, you're given a simple task: mash lentils with garlic and oil using a grinding stone. A white cat jumps onto the counter beside you, watching closely. You look into her eyes, and she gives a single judgmental blink. Clearly, your mashing technique needs work. Later, you're allowed to observe the grain storage area, a cool, low chamber guarded, yes, by cats. Not officially, of course, but they patrol it like a beat. You see one squeeze behind a basket, reemerge with a twitching tail, then settle atop a grain jar like a triumphant deity. You ask a nearby servant if the cats have ranks or territories. He thinks for a moment. There's one who always guards the millet. We call her Captain. The temple mice, you suspect, have long since taken their business elsewhere. By now, the stars are peeking through the darkening sky. You help carry the evening bread to the priest's quarters, careful to avoid stepping on tails. A few cats accompany you, as if supervising. As the priests eat, a tabby curls up near your cushion and begins purring softly. One of the elders chuckles, tapping the cat's head gently. She likes you, he says. You must smell like lentils. Another priest tells a story of a cat who once sat in judgment over a kitchen dispute, two servants arguing about a missing fig cake. The cat had curled up beside one of them and ignored the other completely. So we blamed the second man. How could a cat be wrong? You learn that some kitchens even kept informal cat logs, simple tallies of which cats appeared, how long they stayed, whether any scraps were given. Some of these, historians have found, were almost poetic. Rainy day, 3 cats, one with a limp, all silent. Or, no fish today, the ginger one sulked. You can't help but smile. It's all so familiar, the exasperated affection, the way cats become part of the routine, part of the gossip, part of the family. Later that night, after the fires are banked and the last dishes cleaned, you find a quiet spot in the courtyard. A few cats have already claimed the warm stones. You join them, lying on your back, looking up at the stars, while a fuzzy shape curls against your side. You think about how these creatures, barely changed in thousands of years, have watched over kitchens and temples, curled in the laps of scribes, nuzzled against the feet of cooks, and sat beside pharaohs. You murmur softly to the cat beside you. She flicks an ear and settles deeper into sleep. You're not sure what kind of job description that is, but it feels complete. A warm breeze carries the scent of lotus and something faintly musty, papyrus perhaps, as you shuffle your way into the temple library, or what passes for one. It's not a library in the modern sense, no grand shelves, no whispering students, but rather a cool chamber stacked with reed baskets full of tightly rolled scrolls. You're here to explore the sacred scribe's domain, and, of course, to meet the cats who think they run it. You duck beneath a low lintel, careful not to trip over the fluffy black cat sprawled dramatically across the threshold. She doesn't move. You apologize. She yawns. Inside, the chamber is dim, the only light filtering through a high lattice window. The scribe, a man named Keddy, sits cross-legged on a mat, hunched over a scroll of fine linen, his brush poised mid-character. He glances up briefly, then gestures for you to be quiet. And then, from behind a clay jar comes a soft sound. Scritch, scratch, pat, pat, pat. You wait. A moment later, a kitten appears, dragging a feather quill. It's nearly twice her size, and she's clearly proud of it. Keddy sighs. That's ink. She's learned to steal brushes, but not yet to return them. Cats in the scriptorium are not a rare sight, you learn. In fact, they're a fixture. As Keddy explains, without ever quite looking away from his work, scrolls were made from delicate materials, easily chewed by rodents. Cats, with their sharp ears and sharper claws, were the guardians of the written word. Unpaid, but enthusiastic. You sit beside him as he works, watching the careful flow of hieratic script, cursive and compact, a language with muscle memory. The cat jumps into his lap. He doesn't flinch. She's learned not to smudge the ink, he mutters. Nearby, an older cat snoozes atop a pile of blank papyrus rolls. You ask if that's allowed. Katie shrugs. He's the editor. Cats, it seems, are also muses. Some of our proverbs are inspired by them, Keddy says. He unrolls a smaller scroll and reads, "The wise man does not chase the mouse too quickly, lest the cat grow bored." That one might be a metaphor, or not. Historians still argue whether cats were officially trained for temple duties or merely accepted into them by virtue of charisma. Some scrolls list feline names among the daily happenings. Others describe cats sleeping during rituals or purring during sacred recitations, as though contributing their own commentary. You help Keddy tidy up, gently moving a dozing feline from a pile of inkstones. She opens one eye, blinks slowly, and allows it. You feel honored. He shows you a peculiar scroll kept separate from the rest, its edges chewed, the text smeared. This was once a copy of the Book of the Dead, he says, until a cat knocked over the lamp, ran through the ink, and ruined half the stanzas. You blink. We rewrote it, he adds, but this one we kept, as a reminder that not even the gods escape cat interference. The day drifts by in the soft hush of rustling scrolls and feline sighs. You learn that cats occasionally disrupted ceremonies by curling up on altars mid-offering, knocking over oil lamps, or choosing the precise moment of sacred silence to yowl about something mysterious. Priests never punished them. It was believed that Bastet forgave all feline mischief. Once, Keddy says, a cat stole a priest's ceremonial wig mid-chant and darted up a column with it. The congregation interpreted it as a sign. Of what? Depends who you ask. The library also houses some early veterinary notes, written by scribes who likely doubled as amateur animal caretakers. Remedies for fleas, poultices for scratches, even a formula to soothe anxious cats, crushed blue lotus mixed with goat's milk administered upon a soft cushion. Modern historians debate whether that worked. The cats likely just liked the milk. As evening falls, you're invited to read aloud from a scroll, a lullaby of sorts, meant to soothe both human and feline minds. Your voice, echoing in the chamber, is joined by a steady purring chorus. You never imagined you'd do group meditation with ancient temple cats, but here you are. You end with a passage thought to be composed by a scribe named Meru. To write with a cat beside thee is to borrow the calm of the gods. You close the scroll, and in the hush that follows, ink jumps into your lap, circles twice, and settles. Keddy smiles for the first time all day. She's chosen you. That means you get to feed her tomorrow. Your next stop? The granaries. You emerge from the temple library into the amber afternoon light, ink still trailing you like a shadow, your new, purring sidekick. Together, you wander toward the towering mud brick silos at the edge of the city, structures that seem to rise from the sand like sleeping giants with bellies full of grain. The air smells of sun-warmed straw with an undercurrent of something yeasty and old, like the ghost of yesterday's bread. A scribe named Senmut greets you with a grin and a handful of barley. Not for you, for the cats. They've learned that where there's grain, there are mice, and where there are mice, there's work to be done. The feline population here is robust. They're lean, quick, and possess the same smug aura as an underpaid security guard who knows the whole building would collapse without them. Senwood explains as you walk. Every morning we measure the grain, check for spoilage, note any suspicious chew marks. And every morning our cats have already been on the job for hours. They leave us little trophies. He gestures to a row of clay jars near the doorway, each with a tiny mouse tail poking out. You try not to make a face. Ink doesn't. Inside, it's surprisingly cool. The silos are hollow, smooth-walled towers designed to keep the grain dry and safe, but rodents are persistent. That's where the cats come in. They patrol the storage pits like miniature gods of justice, delivering swift, squeaky judgment upon intruders. You spot one now, an elegant cream-colored feline leaping from one sack to another with casual precision. That's Dust, Senmut says. She caught 11 mice last week. We're pretty sure she's applying for a promotion. Historians still argue whether these grain cats were officially part of the state workforce. There's evidence of them being named in grain records, usually next to humorous annotations. One tablet reads, Kemet the Mouser, 3 kills, 1 broken jar, slept in the sun for 5 hours. You step carefully around a napping trio curled in a shallow basket. Senmut tosses them each a bit of dried fish. We think they understand the ration system, or they've just trained us to feed them at their convenience. In some towns, granary cats were considered so essential that stealing one carried harsh penalties. There's a famous case recorded in a crumbling papyrus where a man tried to lure a temple cat away with a piece of salted duck. He was fined, publicly scolded, and, according to one scribe, forever haunted by bad grain luck. You pass a side room where tiny paw prints are etched in the dried clay floor. They wandered in while the plaster was setting, Senmut says. We thought about smoothing it out, but it felt ceremonial. Outside, a pair of boys chase after a kitten who's stolen a fig. She dashes under a cart and disappears, tail high with triumph. You ask Senmut if cats ever caused more problems than they solved. Oh, absolutely, he chuckles. They've knocked over oil jars, shredded scrolls, fallen asleep on the scale pans mid-weighing, and once we found one inside a sealed grain jar. We still don't know how he got in. You spend the rest of the day tagging along with the grain inspectors, many of whom carry cats in their arms like accessories. Ink returns to you, purring dramatically and flopping at your feet until you agree to scratch her ears. You're not sure if she likes you, or if she's just assigned you as her temporary servant. Later, as the last of the sunlight fades behind the walls, you and Senmut climb the steps to the top of one silo. The wind is stronger up here. From this height, you see the entire city stretched out below. Temples, homes, courtyards, gardens, and a surprising number of cats perched on rooftops, watching like tiny guardians. The sun sinks lower, and somewhere a priest begins to chant. Cats thread through the alleys like whispers. You ask if anyone ever counted them. Senmut shrugs. We tried once, got to 137, then realized we'd counted the same kitten 6 times. You watch Ink bat at a beetle, then promptly lose interest. She climbs onto your shoulder and purrs into your ear, her breath warm and a little fishy. It's a fitting end to the day, standing atop a granary in ancient Egypt, covered in cat fur, full of barley dust, and undeniably at peace. Remember, Senmut says as you descend the steps, our cats aren't just pest control, they're luck, they're tradition, and some of us think they're smarter than we are. You glance at Ink. Yeah, you believe it. You wake the next morning not to the crow of a rooster, but to the soft, rhythmic purring of Ink sprawled across your chest like a living scarf. A sliver of early light slips through the wooden shutters, cutting across your borrowed sleeping mat. Outside, the world of the ancient Egyptians is already stirring. Today, you're joining a woman named Tia, a linen dyer known around the city for her sky-colored robes, and the cat who never leaves her side, Azure, a feline with such strikingly blue eyes that even temple artists have tried to sketch them. You meet them near the river, the sun glinting off the Nile like a million tiny mirrors. Azure watches your approach with a narrowed gaze, her tail flicking with something between suspicion and mild annoyance. You've been warned. She doesn't warm up easily. Tia welcomes you with a splash of water and a quick smile. She's elbow deep in indigo dye already, stirring the deep ceramic vat with the ease of long practice. This is where we make beauty, she says, motioning to the line of linens flapping like white sails behind her, and where the cats come to nap on all the best fabrics. Azure promptly demonstrates, hopping up onto a just-dried tunic and curling herself into a smug donut. The dyeing district is lively. Children run between baskets of raw flax, artisans hammer patterns into wooden stamps, and women laugh as they scrub stains from their hands with crushed chalk. And through it all, cats roam, leaping across weaving looms, chasing threads, and occasionally helping themselves to unattended meals. It's a little chaotic. It's also utterly charming. You ask Tia how the cats ended up here. She shrugs. Maybe they like the warmth, maybe they're drawn to color, or maybe they just like being in the center of everything. The cats here aren't just tolerated, they're part of the process. Azure likes to sit by the indigo when it's fresh, Tia says, nodding to a stained cushion by the vat. We think she helps it ferment properly, or maybe she's just supervising. Some of the fabrics bear faint paw prints. Happens all the time, Tia says without a hint of annoyance. People think it's lucky, especially foreigners. They pay extra for blessed cloth. Historians still debate whether this practice was widespread or just a quirk of certain cities. Some evidence suggests that certain markets did indeed advertise textiles as cat approved, with paw mark motifs baked into the sales pitch. A clay tablet from Memphis even shows a stylized cat above the words, soft as moonlight, touched by Bastet herself. You sit beside a group of girls weaving flax thread into spools. A tabby kitten bats at the spinning spindle. Instead of shooing her away, one of the girls giggles and lets her ride it briefly like a furry carousel. Tia passes you a piece of linen dyed pale green, still cool and damp from the vat. Here, she says, for the sweat. You'll need it. She's right. The work is hot, fragrant with earth and minerals and sweat. The cats naturally have found all the shady spots. You watch one balancing atop a tall rack of hanging cloths, her tail swinging lazily as if keeping rhythm with the flapping linens. Later, you help carry dyed bolts to a market stall. As you pass through narrow alleys, more cats appear, lounging on windowsills, curled under carts, cleaning themselves atop stone benches. You realize that this part of town doesn't just tolerate felines, it moves around them. A weaver pauses so a cat can finish grooming in the middle of a doorway. A baker leaves scraps outside for a trio of strays. A priestess lightly taps her sandals to shoo one from her basket, not with frustration, but like someone waking a friend. Tia catches your eye. They make this place feel alive, don't they? Even the pharaoh himself couldn't dye cloth without a few paw prints. You're not sure if she's joking, but you wouldn't be surprised if Ramses the Great once had to stop a royal ceremony because his cat wanted to nap on his robe. The sun reaches its highest point, and the market square becomes a patchwork of colors: purple-dyed tunics, ochre scarves, crimson sashes. Azure perches on the edge of the stall like a queen, blinking slowly at passersby. A merchant stops to admire her. Very fine cat, he says to Tia. She blesses your goods, yes? Tia nods solemnly, and she raises the price by 2 debens. They both laugh, and the man actually pays it. You share bread and dates beneath a woven awning while Azure licks her paws nearby, visibly unbothered by anything that doesn't involve fish or naps. Tia leans back and says, I sometimes think they remember a time when they were worshipped, and they haven't let us forget it. There's an old saying she quotes, a cat does not fetch, it receives. Seems about right. You head home as the market winds down, the streets softening in the evening light. Azure follows for a while, then disappears into a patch of reeds near the river, probably off to inspect someone else's linens. Ink rejoins you at the door of your lodging. She meows once as if to say, you smell like dye and cats I don't like. Then she curls around your legs and leads you back inside. Today you've learned something simple and lovely, that cats, even in ancient times, had an uncanny ability to turn any space into the domain, including the dye pots. You wake again, and this time there's fur on your tongue. Ink, who spent the night curled across your face like a particularly soft scarf, stretches luxuriously before hopping off the mat with a flick of her tail. Outside, the first light glimmers across the Nile, golden and quiet. But you've got a long day ahead, and it's time to meet someone who gives a whole new meaning to the phrase cat person. His name is Neferhotep, and he's a scribe in the House of Life, the sacred institution where temple records are kept. He also has 6 cats, all named after celestial bodies. You know this because he introduces you to each of them as if they're esteemed coworkers. This is Sirius, the serious one, he says, lifting a grumpy tabby from a papyrus scroll. That's Sekhmet, the destroyer of lizards. And over there is Orion. He sleeps on my inkstones. Sirius huffs indignantly and walks away. You can't blame him. He has things to do, probably something involving knocking over a pot of black ink. The scriptorium is cooler than the street, shaded by thick limestone walls and draped fabrics. The air smells like old parchment, fresh ink, and slightly singed rushlights. The cats are everywhere, on desks, under chairs, on top of sacred texts. You take a seat beside Neferhotep and watch as he unrolls a sheet of papyrus with reverent care. Cats, he says, are excellent company when transcribing, except when they sharpen their claws on tax records. You nod sagely. That does seem like the kind of civil disobedience a cat would engage in. As he writes, you learn that feline appearances in administrative work aren't just distractions. Historians still argue whether some paw prints preserved in temple archives were accidents or intentional blessings. One famous case from Thebes features a will detailing a land transfer, with a cat's paw print precisely where a witness's seal should be. Scholars debate, was this cheeky symbolism, or did someone genuinely believe a cat could ratify legal documents? You can't help but imagine a trial where a cat is called as a witness. Did you see the theft? The judge asks. The cat yawns, licks its foot, and walks away. Today, Neferhotep is working on a festival scroll, listing the proper hymns and food offerings for the coming celebrations. I like to read it aloud, he says. The cats appreciate the cadence. You're skeptical, until Sekhmet jumps into his lap during a particularly elegant passage and starts purring so loudly it vibrates the table. Of course, not all cats are interested in religious texts. You watch as Orion jumps into a box of discarded drafts and begins chewing on a rejected hymn. He's always been a critic. Neferhotep sighs. You spend the afternoon learning to make ink, grinding charcoal, mixing it with gum arabic, and occasionally fishing bits of fur out of the pot. Cost of doing business, your host shrugs. He lets you try writing a line. It's clumsy, uneven, and immediately walked across by Venus, a spotted kitten who seems particularly drawn to wet surfaces. Still, Neferhotep gives you a nod of approval. Your loop on the ka symbol isn't terrible, he says, which might be the highest compliment of your week. While the scribe works, he tells stories about the time Sirius knocked an entire ledger into the Nile, about the pharaoh's clerk whose cat once delivered a live snake to a diplomatic meeting, about the day a priest blamed a scribal error on divine feline interference. And you know, he adds, they never question it if you say the cat was an avatar of Bastet. Even the high priest won't argue with that. You imagine this trick has gotten many an apprentice out of trouble. Late in the day, a temple attendant arrives with a request, a marriage contract to be drafted by sunset. Make it romantic, the man says, but not too romantic. Her father will be reading it. You and Neferhotep get to work, laying out clauses about dowries, household rights, and promises of mutual affection. Then comes the line about pets. She brings 3 cats, the groom has written in a margin note. They must be respected. Neferhotep chuckles. Smart man. You realize how deeply entwined cats are, not just as companions, but as family members, as legal considerations, as figures worthy of clauses and seals. Outside, the sun slants low, turning the stone floor to gold. The cats stretch and yawn in synchronized fatigue. Sirius climbs atop a shelf and closes his eyes. Venus curls inside a scroll basket. Even Sekhmet stops hunting long enough to nap beneath your stool. As you roll up the last papyrus and wipe ink from your hands, Neferhotep looks at you with a sly smile. You've been accepted, he says, nodding toward the cats dozing around you. They don't usually nap near strangers. You try not to look too proud. The scribe hands you a small scrap of papyrus as a gift. On it is a careful drawing of a cat with the words, "May your ink never dry, and your feline always return home." You tuck it into your tunic, heart oddly warmed. As you leave the house of life, the evening air feels softer, the city quieter, and your steps slower. You wonder if future historians will argue over your visit here, your footprint, your clumsy handwriting, and the cat hair probably now preserved forever in some sacred scroll. The moon is high by the time you reach the outskirts of the city again, and there's a certain hush to the sand, the kind of silence only broken by the occasional rustle in the reeds or a soft meow behind your heel. Yes, ink followed you, or perhaps led you. Tonight, you're headed for a place that even most city dwellers speak of in low tones and with fond smiles. Bastet, or what you might call Cat Town. A modest district where the worship of Bastet, the lioness turned domestic cat goddess, is not just ritual, but lifestyle. Here, the lines between house cat and holy are blurred beyond recognition. You're met by a priestess, serene and shimmering in linen robes, who welcomes you without surprise. The cats said you'd arrive. Okay, sure. You've learned by now not to question prophetic cats. She leads you into a low sanctuary illuminated by oil lamps, each flickering with a lazy rhythm like it too has grown drowsy. The air is thick with incense, lotus, myrrh, and something distinctly feline. The walls are covered in painted murals, some tender, some majestic. Bastet dances, lounges, protects, nurses kittens, and guards the gates of dreams. At the center lies a statue, gilded, serene, purring in your imagination. Before it sits a ring of cats, all alert, all completely still. It is a little spooky. They're listening, the priestess whispers. To you? To the statue? To some frequency only cats understand? You're not sure, but you lower your voice anyway. You're invited to sit in on a quiet ceremony. No blood, no bluster, just the soft tones of a hymn sung in honor of the goddess, the clink of bronze bowls offering cream, and the barely audible purrs that rise and fall like waves. Each cat here, the priestess explains, has a name, a story, and a role. Some guard the sick, others keep the temple pest-free. A few, we believe, are direct reincarnations of past caretakers. You squint at one elderly tabby perched on a pedestal. He looks like he's seen things. The temple also serves as a kind of adoption center. People bring orphan kittens here, hoping for Bastet's blessing. Sometimes, they say, the cats choose humans in return. More than one temple boy has been claimed mid-prayer by a kitten crawling into his lap. Historians still argue whether this practice was officially religious or simply the result of ancient Egyptians being utterly enchanted by their own cat population. Some point to royal decrees mandating food for temple cats. Others highlight satirical tomb art showing scribes so overwhelmed by kittens they couldn't finish their work. Both camps agree. This was not just a city of cat lovers, it was a civilization of them. You tour the rest of the sanctuary, passing rooms dedicated to the care of aging cats, others to the grooming of divine felines before festivals. You pause at a little courtyard filled with gentle laughter, young novices playing with balls of dyed wool, followed by an enthusiastic pack of kittens. It's wholesome enough to cure any modern cynicism you still carry. You ask if people ever left offerings for cats alone, not just the goddess. The priestess nods. Of course. Fish, perfume, even little carved toys. There's one woman who swears a cat cured her joint pain. She brings saffron every month. You learn that, in this neighborhood, cats are consulted for everything from marriage omens to whether a market deal will go well. If a cat sneezes on your left, good fortune. If it sits on your invoice, maybe renegotiate. By now, the sanctuary has quieted even further. Most cats have found their nighttime corners, sun-warmed stones, priestess laps, or nestled into ceremonial baskets. You're offered a place to sleep beneath a painted frieze. You lie down on a linen mat and almost immediately feel a warm weight settle on your chest. Ink, of course, followed by another furred figure beside your thigh, then one at your feet. You've officially been drafted into the feline clergy. The priestess smiles as she dims the last of the lamps. They trust you now, or they've decided you're a suitable mattress. Probably both. The temple walls keep the night air mild. A breeze stirs the curtains, and somewhere far off, a priest is singing a lullaby hymn to Bastet. It's just melodic enough to drift under your skin, just calm enough to wrap around your thoughts like gauze. You feel the soft thrum of purring all around you. It's like lying in the chest of the earth itself. As you blink slowly, Ink lifts her head one last time, places a paw delicately on your forehead like a blessing, and curls up again. You smile in the dark. Tomorrow, maybe you'll learn the art of feline mummification or help deliver fish to the temple kitchens. But tonight, you are still. You are quiet. You are surrounded by ancient purring divinity. And not for the first time, you think, maybe cats don't serve gods in Egypt. Maybe they are them. You wake gently as if surfacing from the Nile itself, slow, warm, and disoriented by softness. There's a sliver of dawn edging through the linen curtain, brushing golden light across the painted paws of Bastet. Ink stretches on your chest like she owns the place, which, given the temple hierarchy, she absolutely does. You rise quietly, careful not to disturb the sleepy tail that's wound itself around your ankle. The temple cats are just beginning their morning rituals, grooming, yawning, and blinking judgmentally at the humans who rise too early. Today, your journey takes you into the heart of an Egyptian cat tomb. Not metaphorically. You're guided by a novice down a long stone path to a modest cliffside complex near the necropolis of Bubastis. It's here, beneath layers of sun-baked sediment, that hundreds, possibly thousands of feline mummies once rested, interred by ancient caretakers who believed their pets deserved nothing less than eternal reverence. Some tombs were built for individual cats, wrapped in embroidered linen, decorated with tiny amulets, and sometimes buried with a mouse offering for the afterlife. Others housed vast communal cat mummies, a practice that historians still debate. Was it sincere mass devotion, or an overzealous cottage industry to supply temple offerings? A little of both, perhaps. As you descend into the cool chambers, you pass shelves stacked with cylindrical bundles, each containing the preserved remains of a cat. Their forms vary, some in tight fetal curls, others wrapped with intricate geometric patterns. A few have painted wooden masks resting atop them, stylized into wide golden eyes and serene feline smiles. One mummy has a tiny bronze bell tied to its wrappings. You can almost hear it jingle in your memory. Your guide explains that mummifying a cat was no casual matter. First, a priest would bless the animal. Then came the embalming, removal of moisture using natron salts, wrapping with scented oils, and adornment with charms. Bastet's symbols, lotus flowers, protective eyes, carved claws, were often included to guard the soul in its journey. And yes, they believed cats had souls. Some Egyptians even requested to be buried alongside their cats, requesting that their spirit, and their pets reunite in the field of reeds, an eternal paradise filled with food, sunlight, and no rude dogs. You examine an offering tray placed in one niche, dried fish, a comb, and a tiny alabaster dish of milk, long evaporated. It's unclear whether this was for the cat or the goddess who loved them. In the furthest chamber, you reach something truly extraordinary, the resting place of what seems to have been a cat high priestess. She wears a collar of gold leaf and lapis lazuli, her linen bandages painted with protective spells. Her tomb is more lavish than some human ones. No one knows her name, but based on the attention paid to her burial, she was clearly more than a mouser. Nearby, chiseled into the wall, is a hymn to Bastet, written in flowing hieroglyphs. Your guide reads softly, "She who dances in shadow, whose purr is a shield, goddess of comfort, of fury concealed. May she guard this soul in soft-furred delight and bathe it in moonlight through every night." You can't help but smile. Even in death, cats were wrapped in poetry. Historians still debate the economic side of all this devotion. Was the cat mummification boom fueled by genuine love, or did temples commodify cats for pilgrims who bought them as offerings? Archaeologists have uncovered some mummies that were, well, not quite fully feline, containing only a paw or even just straw, a feline version of shrinkflation. But here in this tomb, every cat seems cherished. You run your fingers lightly across a sarcophagus lid etched with paw prints. Someone took the time to make this. As you emerge from the tomb, blinking into daylight, you feel the weight of centuries pressing into your skin. Not heavy, but familiar, like a cat curling into your lap without asking. Back in the city, preparations are beginning for the annual Festival of Bastet. You pass through markets bursting with color, green papyrus streamers, brass charms in the shape of curled tails, even festival cakes shaped like cats, ears and all. Children wear cat ear headdresses. Musicians practice lilting songs in the streets. You're told that during the height of the New Kingdom, this festival drew pilgrims from across Egypt. Entire barges of celebrants floated up the Nile, singing, drinking, and bringing cats dressed in ceremonial beads. One scribe described it as both sacred and wildly inconvenient. As you watch the festival dancers perform a slow, elegant routine mimicking feline movement, a thought returns to you. The line between animal and deity was never rigid here. In a world of crocodile gods and beetle-headed sun lords, a graceful house cat was as valid a divine messenger as any. You stroll through the celebration, heart softened by the sheer earnestness of it all. It's not just worship, it's affection. And perhaps that's the secret of ancient Egypt's cat obsession. It wasn't just superstition or symbolism. It was a deep daily intimacy with creatures who made no demands, judged no pharaohs, and offered silent companionship across dynasties. Even now, under the dusk-tinged sky, a kitten curls around your ankle. You've been chosen again. You head back toward the sanctuary, candlelight flickering from its open archways. You pass the now familiar faces priests, novices, street merchants, and sleepy cats draped over every ledge. Ink trots ahead, tail high. You follow. The day slows, and so does your breathing. Each footstep seems to float a little more. Each sound softens at the edges. You're not just a visitor anymore. You are, in your own way, part of this ancient, purring city. And now, as we drift to the end of this soft, slow journey through Egypt's furred reverence, the world begins to hush. The desert breeze calms, the candlelight fades. Even the temple cats, ever watchful, blink longer and longer until their eyelids rest. You feel the warm stone beneath you. A linen pillow cradles your head. The air holds that ancient scent of myrrh and sun-baked papyrus, timeless, tender, familiar. It's the kind of stillness that stretches across centuries, that settles gently into your bones. Maybe you're still in Bubastis. Maybe you're somewhere between dreams and memory. Either way, there's no rush to decide. The rituals of the day have all played out, offerings given, stories shared, and the final mule of a kitten fading into the hush of dusk. Even the gods, you imagine, are tucking in their tails, curling into some eternal pose. And you've seen the temples, met the priestesses, brushed fingers across golden collars and inked fur. You've walked paths padded by paws for thousands of years, and now you rest among them. The quiet purr of the world surrounds you. It doesn't matter where history ends and dreams begin. You're held in both. So go ahead, little scribe of sleep. Let your thoughts stretch out, long and loose. Let your breathing deepen like the Nile in flood season. Let the gentle pads of time walk softly across your heart. No more stories tonight, only stillness, only sleep, only the softest, eternal purr beneath the stars.